This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. This episode is exclusively brought to you by Top Shelf Records. And for those of you not in the know, I will make you in the know. It's a great label from the Boston area run by Seth and Kevin, two great dudes, put out a ton of awesome stuff, including the guest this week, Pianos Become the Teeth. They put out all of their previous stuff, a really, really great label. I'm excited that they wanted to come on and sponsor this show. And I specifically wanted to talk to you about an artist of theirs called You Blew It. I picked up their last LP. It was awesome. It was just one of those things where you listen to it, you just heard the fun. They seem to have fun playing music together. They seem to have fun recording it. And even though that sounds like such a simple thing, it makes all of the difference when you are actually listening to it as a consumer. They have a new record coming out next year called Keep Doing What You're Doing. The track I'm going to play you is called Award of the Year Award, which is perfect for this time of the year. So let's listen to a little bit of that, then I'll tell you a little bit more. So yeah, that was that track. Pretty fucking rad, right? I think you should pre-order it because you can do so immediately at topshelfrecords.com. They've also relaunched their website, and it features a bunch of new stuff. If you're like already familiar with Top Shelf and you're like, yo, I get it, I visited the website like once every few months. For those of you that are interested in vinyl, they've got their discography section up now because they have all of the pressings and all of the nerd stuff that you care about. You blew it. I have a feeling this record is going to make the rounds, as they say. Even though it's coming out in January, I think by the end of 2014, a lot of people will start to be like, dude, that record really, really good, and this should probably be in my year-end list. So maybe I'm just thinking that because that's kind of as far as my own year-end list. And the band is on tour with the Front Bottoms from January 9th until February 1st of 2014. So the band is You Blew It. The record is called Keep Doing What You're Doing. It's out January 14th, but you can pre-order it now. All the vinyl packages and everything else you want is at topshelfrecords.com. Support them. Awesome people. It's cold here in Southern California. And by cold, I mean like low 50s, which for the rest of you is like, yo, that's warm in the winter. I've got like 7 feet of snow around me. I have to dig my car out. I can't even leave the house. But I can leave the house. It's just a little cold. You know, I got to put in a sweatshirt. I just always love people complaining about weather out here because we don't have seasons really. Oh, we vary between, 55 degrees and 75 degrees. And when it like goes above or below that, then that's when we're like, oh, dude, this is some serious shit right now. But anyways, the guest this week is Mr. Kyle Durfey. Again, I never asked the guests how to pronounce their last name, but Kyle is the lead vocalist for a band called Pianos Become the Teeth, which is, I'm going to go ahead and say it, one of my favorite bands to exist right now. I identify with them on so many different levels, and Kyle and I had never met up until like earlier this year, and then I just was able to kind of gush about him and his band, and then he turned around and said, hey, I really, really like the podcast you do, and it was like, oh, wow, it's pretty cool when that stuff kind of comes full circle. So anyways, more on him in a minute. Let's talk about propertyofzach.com. Visit that site. They're doing a lot of year-end wrap-up content stuff, so dive in there. You'll be able to find all of the best stuff that happened in 2013, especially from a musical perspective. So visit that site and become educated. Also, this is the last time I'm going to bug you. We're doing a survey. I work with an advertising agency called The Midroll, and we got to get information about those of you who are listening. I would really appreciate if you dove onto this website, themidroll.com/survey/words. I know it's kind of a pain in the butt to type, but if you hop onto any of the 100 Words podcast social networks, you'll get that link and you can contribute in that fashion. Because we just need to know who we're talking to. That's basically it. Because I have no idea. I have some sense of it. It's males and females. It's people with ears. That's basically all I know. And for those of you that have been following the show religiously, you also know that the schedule on the release dates have changed. I used to do new shows on Tuesdays, but now I do Wednesdays. And I promise that is the last public service announcement for that. So new episodes are on Wednesdays. And visit the website, 100wordspodcast.com. Over the course of pretty much the last half of December, I'm going to be posting a bunch of fun stuff from previous guests. They are kind enough to give some time and give some thoughts in regards to their own personal years, whether it's like the top 5 records of the year, top 5 things they did that year, whatever. I'm just trying to get it to be, original. Because, everybody gets lists and that everyone loves lists. And so I'm obviously doing that as well. I did it last year and it was awesome because I got a lot of feedback from it when I just did it out of a lark. So pay attention to the site. You will become educated. One thing I wanted to speak about before I talked about Kyle a little bit more. So I was listening to a recent interview with Marilyn Manson, which is, I know, random, but he was on a podcast I listened to. Because basically, for those of you that don't know, I listen to so many damn podcasts. And that's basically all I listen to. Unless I'm sitting at my desk working, which I'm usually listening to vinyl at that point. There are very rare instances where I'm listening to music in the car, unless someone else is in the car with me, because I'm not going to punish them to my weird podcast tastes. He said something that really, really resonated with me and something that I wanted to share with you. Because of the society that we live in currently, it's difficult to have contexts for things. I feel like this is something I'm trying to obviously accomplish with this show as well. Build you a picture of who this person is, and obviously the sort of creative energy that they are putting forth and where it comes from. Because ultimately, that will not only endear you to the person more, but give you a sense of who they are and why they do what they do. Because you don't get any sense of context when you're just obviously popping onto a Facebook page, when you're popping onto a Wikipedia page. Like, you can be very learned about a certain subject in regards to reading about it. But if you're not using that in relation to other things that happened during that time, i.e. providing a context, it's really difficult. Abbott and Costello. I would venture a guess that people 30 years old and younger, have no idea who Abbott and Costello are. They maybe know the name, but they've never watched anything. They've never heard who's on first. And it's like these things, granted, this is obviously close to 100 years ago that those things existed. But again, it's not provided in any sort of context. A person could read through the entire Wikipedia entry on Lou Abbott and Costello and not be able to understand how big comedians they were at the time. I don't know. It just got me thinking. And ultimately, that's another reason why I do this show, just to provide and build a sort of narrative and a context for how all of these things kind of interplay with one another. Independent music is such an important part of my life, and I know probably just as important as it is to you. You want to have something to document it. Not to say that these digital files will live forever, because in 20 years, something will have probably moved along, and then I'll be like, oh, wow, remember all those hours and hours of time I spent on this? It's like, yeah, I do. And it was worth it for that period of time where this medium is important. I think it needs to be documented. So it just got me thinking, and I wanted to share with you. It's like, I always love to have that sort of direct feedback from you guys when I say something and it resonates with you from that perspective. Let's talk about Kyle. Pianos Become the Teeth is a great band from the Maryland area. I became privy to them, I'd say their first EP that came out on Top Shelf Records. To say that it affected me is an understatement. It really, really stuck with me in ways that new records just don't have a tendency to do. And so for the rest of that year, I just kept revisiting that record. It spoke to me. And then I saw them a few times, and I don't know, it just really cemented that band within my own musical likes and loves. And I just felt like they were doing so many things that really appealed to me. I'd wanted to have Kyle on the show for a long time. We finally were able to connect over the phone. I originally wanted to do this in person, but I knew that he wasn't going to be in my area or vice versa for quite some time. Here's what transpired. Kyle's a great dude, and I will let the interview do the talking.
It was with your first, Old Pride. I wish I could remember who introduced me to it, but basically it was one of those things where, because all music is obviously cyclical, and whatever, bands like Daylight now, where it's like, oh, hey, like that kind of sounds like Nirvana, and that happened in the early 90s, and Old Pride was given to me in the context of like, this kind of sounds like what Taken was doing back in, late 90s, not saying it in a derogatory sense, but like, hey.
No.
But hey,
I like your band, so I'm not a fan.
Well, good. And nothing makes me more happy. I just immediately fell in love with it, not only just because, stylistically, like both of our bands could have played together if we existed at the same time, but
for sure.
But just the idea of like actually, being, for lack of a better term, like, honest and emotive without being cheesy, because there's that whole line that I think, especially within that particular genre of music, where it's like, hey, you're melodic and yet you're heavy, yet you also share your feelings about things.
Right.
There's a tendency of being like, overly emotional and like overly, dramatic just because they feel like they have to express themselves that way, And like, I didn't get the sense of that with you guys at all.
Well, thanks, man. That rules.
Yeah. And I'm sure like the intention of, obviously, when you guys started to put together the band, that Old Pride, like you guys sounded pretty fully fleshed out at that time as far as like what you wanted to do creatively as a band. Like, did you feel that was a proper representation of what you guys were, trying to accomplish with that first release?
Well, that was really the first the first music we wrote with the lineup that we have now. Because before we put out an EP called Saltwater, and that was like, except for me and Mike, the guitarist, that was a completely different lineup.
Right.
Had like different guitarist, bassist, drummer, and then we also had a synth player at the time. So we wrote that EP, and then we were trying to tour more and actually like do something with the band, and everybody was like pretty much like totally cool with it. And they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, go do it. Find replacements, whatever. So we found replacements, and then we had all those people learn the old songs. And then after that, we were just like, oh, well, yeah, I guess we should just write a record. That's what you do. So that was really just our first time writing music with one another that wasn't like stuff that was already written. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really was, for lack of a better word, just like a very honest record. It was just like, hey, let's just try to write a solid record that we would want to listen to. We were still kind of working on how to write with one another in a way, because everyone had such different tastes at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really have a goal. We were just trying to write cool songs for that record, And like, I think looking back on it, we're all still really happy with what it was, just because it was kind of our first like go at it, kind of.
Yeah,
together.
I mean, I'm sure you look back at like the older material, like the Saltwater EP, and you're just it's kind of cringeworthy, where you're like, you're like,
sure.
you're like not a fan of that. The current incarnation of what you were doing, that you can look back on, the first output and be like, hey, that doesn't suck. Like, that's not bad.
Right. Yeah, it's like we were stoked.
Yeah, because you live in Baltimore currently, correct?
Right.
So born and raised there?
No. Well, both my mom and my dad are from upstate New York. My mom was from Springville, and my dad was from Elmira. But then my dad was in the Army, so we moved around a little bit. Like, I lived in Texas when I was younger. I was born in Virginia, actually, and we lived up in upstate New York for a while. But then we got in not to go heavy immediately, but we got in a car accident that was pretty substantial when I was like 4.
Oh, wow.
I was okay. Well, I had to get surgery, but I was okay. But my dad pretty much crushed like he just like destroyed his legs in the car accident pretty much. So a lot of surgeries, a lot of stuff like that, but obviously he couldn't really be in the Army anymore. He got a good job being an imagery analyst for the government.
Oh, okay.
So we ended up moving. He got a job in D.C. So I lived in Crofton, which is like 40 minutes south of Baltimore. I've lived there since I was like 7.
Okay.
And then seven until like 22 when I moved to Baltimore.
Okay.
So I'm pretty much like a Maryland guy. You know, I moved around when I was younger, but my life as I remember it pretty much is in Maryland.
You were an Army brat, essentially. What?
Yeah, for sure.
What did your dad do for the Army?
He was an imagery analyst. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I guess he worked in Desert Storm, like detecting tanks and stuff like that. Like a lot of stuff he couldn't even really say what he wasn't like a spy or anything, but he couldn't really say like what he was doing because he was like helping detect,
of course,
dangerous things, you know, like missiles maybe or tanks or like enemy vehicles, stuff like that. So he's pretty up there in the ranks doing like really important stuff at the time.
That's crazy. Yeah. I could totally see that being like, you know, he comes home and obviously is like, well, I can't discuss anything of what I did today.
Yep. I had a good day at work and that's it.
Yeah. Was your mom basically at home with you?
Pretty much was a stay-at-home mom for a while. She used to be a nurse. And then when like she went to nursing school when she was younger, she was a nurse for a while. But then when we were born, my sister and I, she stayed home. But then later, we were a little bit older, she started working at a daycare center, like right next to our house, just because she's always loved working with kids and stuff like that. And it wasn't even really a job for her. It was just kind of like, hey, I love doing this, you know?
Yeah. And is your sister younger or older than you?
She is older by 4 years. I'm 29, so that'll make her 33 now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You, as long as you're within a year or two, you're fine.
Yeah, for sure. Like once we were growing, my mom was working at a daycare center, and then once my dad got diagnosed with MS, she pretty much stopped working and was like his primary caretaker. So that's how that went.
And so, like you said, your formative years were basically, you know, all your memories exist within the, you know, Baltimore area.
Yeah, for sure.
And your mom wasn't overly affected with that horrible accident that you were in?
Like you can't even see it anymore, but she like hit her head in the accident, had a like big scar above her eyebrow, but that was it. And then I was in the back seat. We had just put seatbelts in the car, which is nuts, but the seatbelt hit me so hard that I was bleeding internally.
Oh,
so
wow.
They had to go in and do surgery on that. But then after that, I was fine, you know. But yeah, my dad was the one who like pretty much got destroyed in that wreck.
That's crazy. So like, was the accident your guys or you know your car's fault, or did you just get broadsided?
No, yeah, it was the other car's fault. It was actually really lucky because we were driving right past the military base, and I guess we were going straight, and this car was coming the opposite way, turning left into the military base, I guess, and just like tried to beat us, and I think we just slammed right into them.
That's crazy. Yeah. I presume you don't remember that at all.
I don't.
Which is good. Which is good.
It's like for sure, like it's such a serious thing in my family's history, but like I know like specific pieces about it, but I don't really know everything about it, which is kind of strange now I think about it, but really maybe it's for the best.
Well, yeah, you're so young, you know what you're told. That's all you remember.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, they're not going to give me all like the gory details when I'm 4.
Yeah. Hey, Kyle, here we go. This horrific thing happened. We have to tell you blow by blow. You know, like your upbringing. Would you, did you guys have kind of a pretty, idyllic, sort of brother and sister sort of family situation where it was like, okay, this felt, comfortable and like there wasn't a lot of strife internally within the family? Like, how was your vision of that?
Yeah, we had everybody has, like every family has their own issues and stuff like that. But overall, yeah, we were a pretty happy family. I feel extremely lucky with like the way I was brought up. Everybody got along. So overall, I would say I had a very happy childhood, not like overly amazing, but also just like compared to anybody else's, I guess, just pretty normal, pretty happy. So
yeah. No, that's and it's funny because I feel like anytime anybody has that experience, in certain ways you feel weirdly apologetic about it because I mean, obviously, I'm sure you have friends that have had shitty childhoods and that like could care less about their parents. You feel like anytime you're like, oh no, like it was pretty good. Like it's that weird like, I'm sorry you experienced that. Yeah.
It's like I feel so bad for you, but no, I love my parents. I had a good time. I don't know. They were just great parents. I think they I messed up when I was younger, like every kid, every now and then. But they're just like I feel like they did a pretty good job. So I have no beef with my parents. So
yeah, which is awesome. And so like once you started to dive into, high school and all that sort of stuff. Was that kind of when music started to become more a part of your life, or had your parents raised you with it at all?
Not really. Like, my parents were into music, but I mean, they instilled like Billy Joel in me, like stuff like that, all that kind of stuff I love, and like Journey and Fleetwood Mac and stuff like that, like I'll always love. But as far as like really being really, really into music, I think that a lot of it had to do with my sister. She was into like hip hop and a bunch of different stuff, but like always open to everything, which is really, I think, really important to me. Like, she was like, no matter what you're into, just be into it, kind of, So she introduced me to a lot of bands that, looking back, I think are just awful. But like now, it's like I can see at least she was opening my eyes to new things. And then I guess when I was about 15 or 16, I really started getting into like indie, for lack of a better word, bands, like underground punk bands. Like, I actually had a friend, Greg, too, and his older brother was really into hardcore at the time. Like, he introduced me to bands like Snapcase and Shelter and Grade and like all the stuff that just like blew my mind when I heard it, and like filled my love for it, and like Planes Mistaken for Stars, stuff like that. So as soon as I started getting into that stuff, I was just hooked immediately,
Yeah.
And then ever since. So.
In high school, did you care about school? Did you have a good experience, or was it one of those things you're just like, yo, let's keep my head down and get out of this thing?
Right. No, I actually had a good time in high school. I know that's not like a very cool thing, It's like, fuck high school, but it's like, I mean, like, I didn't love high school, but I had a good amount of friends, I got along with everybody. I feel like, I mean, I don't know, I rarely had a lot of enemies, I feel like in general, I try to get along with pretty much everybody, and if I have a problem with you, it's just like, all right, I'll just steer clear, whatever. But like, I don't really remember this time where I was ever like having beef with anybody, or just like, even with like the actual schoolwork itself, like I wasn't like a straight A kid, but I was like kind of like a B student, so it was just like, I don't like sit back and like reflect on high school like, man, those were the greatest years of my life, but I also like, I don't have any hateful spite towards high school or anything. I don't know, I still keep in touch with a good amount of people from high school, so I don't know. Yeah, overall, it was fine for me.
Yeah, no, which is cool. I mean, that I had a very similar experience as well, and I think I think you and I are similar in that, where it was like I enjoyed school and I invested some time into it, but I definitely, once music obviously came into play, it was like, oh, like that's all that I really kind of care about, like.
Right, yeah.
Schools, whatever, but I definitely found myself being sort of like, oh, that weird kid that's into like weird music, but he's cool, like he's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had like a lot of friends who were just like sports guys, and like I like sports too. I didn't really play in high school, but like I was always cool with it. And I didn't start playing bands till after high school, but like I was always the guy who's like, oh yeah, like Kyle, he likes hardcore and this like crazy music. That's cool. He's straight edge, whatever. So everyone was like, it wasn't like I never got made fun of it. All my friends just thought it was like, they went into it, but they thought it was cool that I was, Right.
Which I think that's such an important experience, because it's like, not only does it obviously help you like grow as a person because you're not being like condemned for any one, but then it widens the people's experiences around you, because they're just like, very rarely are you going to come across like, after they've like left high school and whatever, like, when you're like 35 years old, there are very rare instances where you're going to run into like a straight edge kid, like, he's X'd up ready to go to the show or something like that. It's like,
right.
So because you had that, there's like, oh, that experience of like, I see where it adds to a more holistic experience for people that, would never have experienced a person like you. It's awesome.
And that's the cool thing too. It's like, I'm not straight edge anymore. At the time, like when I was in high school, I didn't really claim edge anyways. I was just kind of like, I consider myself straight edge, but I didn't preach about it. I don't know.
You weren't repping it. You weren't buying every varsity letter jacket possible. And,
Right. Yeah. I was just like, hey, I don't want to drink, and all my friends were cool with that too. So I feel like I feel pretty lucky with like my friend or support group in high school, because like I really was into like my own thing. I had a couple friends who were into the same things too, but overall, like everyone just kind of was into whatever, and everyone was cool with it. So yeah, but it was cool to like not drink and do anything, and then have people be cool with it, and they're like, oh, that's cool. If you don't want to do that, fine. More for me, in a way,
Yeah, no, it just makes it, like you said, it makes you have the experience where you can look back on it and be like, oh, those aren't like the golden years of my life, and I'm never like, that was it. Those 4 years were the best time of my life. But you can build off that and be like, oh, that was a good experience.
Yeah, totally.
And so did you, like, once you started obviously like go to shows and that became an important part of your life, did you immediately be like, oh God, I can't wait to sing for a band? Like, how was that your vision, or was it just like, was it by default?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think like going to shows, I kind of knew that I was always just really into bands and music, and just overall I just thought it was like the coolest thing, you know. And certain bands were into such different things and like preaching certain things. I just thought that was cool. And then like I'd go to shows at the Auto Bar in Baltimore all the time, and I really thought like at one point I was just like, man, I really should just start a band, because I could play guitar a little bit, but not really well enough to be in a band. Like I suck at guitar. I'm not good. But
that was your first, like, the guitar was the first thing that you kind of went for.
Yeah. When I was still in high school, I got a guitar for Christmas, and then I took some lessons, so I can play basic chords and stuff like that. But I'm just a shitty guitarist. But,
right.
But yeah, but it really started because I went to a community college near the closest one to my house, Anne Arundel Community College, and I met a bunch of people there who were into bands, and like I had been with people from going to shows. And the first band I was in started because this dude Brian I knew, who was the old drummer of Pianos actually too. His girlfriend said that he was looking for a singer for a band. I was like, well, I've never sang for a band, but shit, I'll try it. You know, why not? So I ended up hooking up with Brian. I just went in. It wasn't even really a tryout. I just kind of they were just jamming, and they just kind of gave me a mic, and I was like, all right, here we go, and just started screaming. I guess it worked. So
that's fun.
So, happened.
By default.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I had absolutely no idea what I was doing at the time, but I guess they seemed to think it was all right, and I thought it was okay also. So that's how it started. It's
kind of funny because you strike me, not using this in a negative light, but you strike me as like a private or more quiet person, in the sense that you're not like this crazy loud boisterous guy. It's like you're not going on stage and like throwing a bunch of jokes in between your songs or anything.
Right.
So it's funny that they were like, oh, like, yeah, Kyle, like, he would make sense to just, like, yell for a band.
Right. Well, yeah, that's funny. I think, I don't know what their idea, because Brian, the drummer, was really the only guy I knew at the time, and they pretty much had a full band fleshed out, and they were just looking for a singer. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I think when I came in, like, none of them knew me, and I'm not a really timid guy, but I'm not the most outgoing dude in certain situations, especially that where I'm like nervous as hell going to sing for the first time. But I think I just kind of went in there and made myself do it and just did it. And I mean, like, I feel like I'm a nice enough guy where I can like make friends too. So as soon as I start hanging out with those guys, it was great. You're like, yeah, cool, yeah, I feel comfortable with you now. But yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about it that way.
I think that's an important distinction. It's like you're not standoffish, because obviously you, like you said, you can make friends with people. But yeah, you're not that. You're not the guy in your classroom that's just like, hey, pay attention to me for 20 minutes. I'm gonna make everybody laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like how comfortable I feel, or like the certain situation that I'm in, if I'm around friends or not. Because yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone's like that in a way. But yeah, overall, I also have not so much stage fright anymore, just because I've been playing shows forever. So that doesn't really bother me. But like, yeah, I don't really like being in front of people like that in a way. So, and also when I start talking, I feel like I just make an ass of myself. So play and then be gone. Unless someone's like speaking to me that night and I feel like I really need to get off my chest, which has happened before. But overall, it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to play and then get off because I feel like an idiot.
Yeah. I can't remember the first time that I saw you guys, but you can always tell, or at least I personally can, like when I look at a band play and I'm like, okay, the focal point of a band is obviously usually the singer, because everyone is paying attention to what's happening with him or her.
Yeah.
But when I first saw you guys play, I definitely saw exactly what you're talking about. Like you were at home when the song was playing, but then in between songs, you're just kind of like, well, let's get to the next song, guys. Let's go.
yeah, for sure.
And not in a bad way, like I'm saying, where it's like, oh, Kyle looks super fucking uncomfortable.
No, I know what you mean. It is true. Like when the song's playing, I feel as cheesy as it is, like I'm in my element. We wrote these songs together. It's like we're there for a reason to play this song, and I think that's how we all feel like when we're playing. It's like we feel right and comfortable and normal. But then like in between songs, I mean, at least personally for me, yeah, it's like we tune. I'm just like, I don't really have anything I want to say, so I'm just going to kind of stand here and not try to look like an idiot. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think over the past couple of years, being on like bigger tours and stuff, I've tried to be a little bit better with that, but overall, yeah, I just want to play and get off.
I do inherently think it's something you could, like you said, you can learn and adapt as you do it more, like in anything in life. But I definitely think that there's something inherent with getting up there and being able to like be in front of people and do it. I mean, it's like, you know, you can survey 100 people in the street and you'd be like, how about I put you in front of 100 people and like, you know, kind of just do your thing. 99 people would say like, oh fuck no, that's terrible.
Right.
So it's not a normal thing, but it's like certain people are more predisposed to that just of, you know, various circumstances. So it's like what you're feeling is normal, but it's definitely, you know, funny that you have to be the focal point. You're just like, well, I guess I'll do this.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, like I said, over the past couple of years, I feel like I've definitely, I don't know if it's I stopped caring so much about being in front of people, like what people think. It's like, well, I mean, I'm going to be up here whether or not you like it or not. So if you like it, awesome. I really hope you do. But if not, it's like, I'm still up here playing. So I think my mindset a little bit has changed playing bigger shows and stuff like that. You know, because I'm always nervous before every show, but now it's just it's a different kind of nervous. I don't know. It's hard to explain. You know.
Yeah. No. I totally empathize with what you're saying. I definitely. Yeah. It was one of those things. Like I mean, me being an only child, like for whatever reason, it's always been easy for me. Like I never had. I mean, obviously most people when they first start playing in bands, they're fucking atrocious as a singer. It's like, you know, you have no quote unquote stage presence, but then, you know, tour, like once Taken started to tour and be more of a thing, it definitely felt, I never had any problem with that. But in talking to people like you and, you know, many of my other friends, I totally like getting where you're coming from. I'm like, oh yeah, like I understand why it's not easy.
Right, yeah. It's a weird. Don't get me wrong. I love singing for a band. I love singing in general. I love it. You know, I love being up there playing songs with my friends.
Right.
It's definitely just because you love it doesn't mean it doesn't make you any less stressed about it. Also.
Yeah. Let me ask you this on the flip side of it. So, do you prefer recording over performing live?
Oh no way.
Good.
I hate recording. It is.
It's the worst.
Like my bandmates make fun of me all the time because I just stress myself out so much, and it's like from an outsider's perspective, people, you just get in there and just wail, you know, who cares? It's like, but there's so much more to it, and now like specifically trying to sing, like actually sing more and like hit a certain note. You just have like all these like things in your head that you're trying to do, and if you're just having a bad day or you're like feeling emotional, well, not feeling emotional because you're feeling emotional either way, but like if you're stressed out about something or like you're getting frustrated with your own body because you can't hit a certain note, it's like the most frustrating thing, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Like for the guitar, I mean, that's not any easier. Like recording any instrument, I can't even imagine doing that ever. You get a tone, you know what you're going to play, and you play it till it's right. With your voice, it's like, it's kind of the same thing, but it's like, if you can't hit that note, you just can't hit it.
Right.
I think it's so, at least for me, it's just so frustrating when I have a certain idea in mind, and I can't do it, like that day, at least, you know, I hate recording. It stresses me out so much.
I completely agree and empathize with you. If you had a list of 100 things that comprise a band, like the activities that involve being in a band, recording for me was always like 99th. Like I'm sure you've experienced this as well. The experience of especially obviously like screaming. Like so you're in the vocal booth, you're fucking yelling your head off, you're sweating, you're spitting all over your lyric sheet. Like it's a total mess in there. And then everybody's in the control room, like, usually like on their computers or phones or whatever the fuck they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you come in because it sounds like absolute shit through the headphones. You're just like, I'm ruining this.
Yeah.
I'm ruining this record. I'm ruining this record.
Yeah, dude, and that's exactly what you think the entire time. It's like, well, this perfect masterpiece is about to just get destroyed.
Totally. And then so you're beating yourself up, and then you walk into the control room, and you want this like overwhelming validation from like either your bandmates or like the dude who's tracking you. You want like good job or some sense of emotion. But usually you walk into the room and it's like fucking just dead air.
Nothing. Yeah, dude, it's the worst. Like it's two things. You walk in there and you do a take, and then like whoever's recording would be like, so how do you feel about that? And it's like, I don't know, I feel pretty good. And then I don't know, what do you guys think? And then they're like, yeah, it sounds cool. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, you said everything sounds cool for the past 2 hours, so it's like, tell me if you hate it, or like either that or they just won't say anything, And so it's just like, well, I'm just gonna assume if you don't say anything, you're cool with it, and just gonna let me, because I know like my own bandmates, they trust me to do what I'm gonna do, and hopefully not fuck it up too badly, you know. But it's the worst. And also with me, when I'm recording, I'll say a line or like I'll do something and then like stop the take. Like the recording, the engineer will like hit the button where you can hear what's going on in that room or whatever, and I can just hear the dudes like changing my words to make it some stupid ass. Which is like, it's like hilarious in hindsight. Like looking back on it now, it's always so funny. But then when it's happening, you're like trying to be so serious and like pull your guts out recording, and then like 2 seconds later, somebody's just immediately making fun of some serious thing you just wrote and making it into a joke. It's like hilarious, but the most frustrating thing in the world too. And like my band and I always joke about it.
You hit on such an important point of that, you know, the other experience when you walk into the control room, like you said, after pouring your guts out, and then being like, you know, your guitarist being like, "Hey, did you say you just stuffed a corn cob up your ass?" Like,
that's exactly what it is. It's just it's hilarious, and I would probably do the exact same thing if I was in their position. But it's just it's the worst. Like I want to kill people when we're actually doing it.
Yeah. For the band that you obviously like started to sing for, you know, did that have a name? Was that like your first like band that you actually like played shows with and stuff like that?
That was my first band experience. We were called Cartel Lover, which our guitar. Yeah, I know. All the bands that I'm in.
That's not a that's not a terrible band name. Like I've heard worse.
Well, okay, I'm not saying much, but yeah, it was like our guitarist thought of it, but it just stuck. But it was like we kind of wanted to sound like Hot Cross meets like You and Not You, and like Me Without You, maybe. I don't know, but it didn't sound like any of those bands. Like I loved Hot Cross. They were one of my favorite bands. So I think vocally, I just kind of wanted to sound like that, you know. And I didn't really have any experience singing, so I was like, I'll try to go for this. But yeah, it didn't sound like any of those bands. It just sounded more like spazzy. Yeah, I know what it's not. It was like dancey, spazzy, out of tune guitars. Like I have a soft spot for it because it's my first band, but it just wasn't good.
Yeah, well, I think most people's first bands should be terrible. When you know, in doing these podcasts, I've definitely, you know, like using a random example, I talked to Davey Havoc from AFI. AFI is his first fucking band, and I'm like, God damn it! Like,
must be nice, seriously.
Yeah, to have it be like, you know, not even from like a career or famed perspective, but to be like your first band still exists and you can still, you know, like be proud of a majority of your output.
Yeah, that's insane to me.
I know. Everyone has to eat shit being terrible bands. Like that's just part of it.
Right? Yeah,
part of it. And so then
that's how you learn like what you're good at and what you're not.
Yeah,
you know.
No, I totally agree. And then you know you can argue that it's like, yeah, you look at the first 3 or 4 AFI records and they're so all distinctly different that it's, you know, you're like, oh, okay, those are technically your first bands. Like they're just under the name AFI.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then you know in high school, did you find yourself having like other interests as far as like, oh man, I can't wait to like go to college? Like, you know, did you have that sort of drive, or was it like, hey, I really kind of like to focus on this music stuff?
Well, I went to community college I have my associate's degree, but it took me 4 years to get it because I went full time for the first year, and then after that I would go, but not take like a full course load and just kind of like take a certain amount of credits. And then I took a total of like 2 or 3 semesters off too. So yeah, I really took my time with it. And I was so close to having my associates that towards like the 3rd year that I was just like, you know, I might as well just get this so I can have it, you know, because it's going to be stupid if I have all these credits and don't have anything to show for it. Yeah. So I think all I needed was like Algebra 2 or something like that to get my associates. But I started playing in another band, which was the second band I was in, and they were called Counting the Days. And it was just, I was playing bass for them because they needed a bass player to go on tour with them. I'll get into that in a second. But they were doing their first tour with me during that math class, and I talked to my teacher, and she was cool with me leaving as long as I got like a certain grade in the class. So I did that like when I was on tour, and then I got my associates, and after that I just stopped going to school. Like I always tell myself I want to go back and just like finish the other 2 years that I need to do, but at the same time it's like I was just doing gen eds, so I could kind of just go and just do that without having to really think about it. But now it's like if I decided to go back to school, I'd have to like really figure out what I want to do, because you're paying all that money and you can't, you know, it's at some point I'm going to go back, but I just really need to figure out what I like really want to do before I invest all that time in it.
Yeah, you'd just be spinning your wheels if you went back and you didn't, you know, really mean it.
Right, yeah, for sure.
The idea that, I mean, I presume you were just like, working random jobs and stuff like that when you were taking semesters off and everything and just kind of doing band stuff like in between all of that?
Yeah. I worked, do you know Uno's, the pizza place?
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay. Yeah, I worked at Uno's for like 4 or 5 years when I was younger, just like, especially with touring, like my managers were always supportive and cool. So they're like, yeah, like I'd work doubles and just try to make as much money as I could for like a month and then just go on tour for a month and then come home. Going back to the college thing, I was University of Baltimore. It's a college like right in the heart of the city. I actually enrolled to go there, but then after that band, Counting the Days I was in, after I had quit that band, they asked me if I wanted to do merch for them in Europe. So I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm never going to go to Europe. I'll do that. So I just like canceled everything that I'd set up for college but then they ended up not having enough room for me to go with them to Europe also. So I pretty much just didn't go to college and then didn't go on tour. So I did absolutely nothing.
Right.
That sucked.
But those jobs are always great to have so that you can, like you said, just fund the idea of being like, okay, well, I've saved enough money. Now I can go on tour and waste it all.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. Yeah, pretty much for the past couple of years I've been touring, that's pretty much all I've been doing is just working random jobs and going on tour. But I've been driving, I drive trucks for a production company now. It's technically freelance work, but I only work for one company. But it's like a bunch of musicians and visual guys too. So it's cool with me leaving for tour, and I always have a job when I come back. I mean, it has slow seasons, but overall, that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because it gives you the ability to be able to obviously do the band and be able to put that together.
Yeah, for sure.
Something I always find interesting too, and like the way that, bands are perceived, Pianos, for lack of a better term, is a very serious band. Like there's nothing,
right.
You're not like putting it on and be like, oh, like, hey, here's a nice Sunday drive. Like, no, this is,
yeah, for sure.
You're investing in the band and the records and whatever music you're listening to. I just always find it funny because it's like, people always presume that the art that the person is creating directly relates to how they are as an individual. Where it's like, oh, obviously all the guys in Pianos like are just stoic, statuesque figures that laugh once a year. Like, do people have that impression of you, or is it? I mean, when I say people, I mean like kids that go to shows and like if they come up and talk to you, they're just like, oh wow, you're normal or whatever. Like, do you have those sort of interactions?
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know. It's strange because, obviously the subject matter is very, very serious, and we obviously take our band seriously and we want to write about stuff that matters to us, But, yeah, it's like aside from the band, we are all just total idiots. I mean, you've met us, we're all just like we're not these serious guys. I mean, we can be serious and we are serious about certain things just like anyone, but like overall we're just toads, man. I don't know. Like we're not these serious guys. We like to have fun, play music because we want to play music and we love doing it. We love going on tour and having fun. I haven't really noticed at shows kids coming up to me and being like, oh my God, I thought you were going to be like this dick or like so sad. I haven't really noticed that. I mean, maybe people aren't coming up to me and talking to me because they think that, and I'll never know that.
Yeah.
But overall, I haven't really noticed anything weird. People come up to me and like tell me like extremely like heartfelt, sad, personal stories, and it like breaks my heart. And that can be, it's weird. It's like a mixture of like, I'm so grateful that like we wrote something that can help people, but at the same time, it's like I'm kind of dealing with my own thing. I don't really have any advice for people, I think some people just want somebody to talk to and somebody to kind of relate to, which, like I will forever be more than happy to be that guy. It's like if I helped you, awesome. But at the same time, it is this like unspoken pressure of like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say to you. It's like I can't really, I'm not necessarily the most optimistic guy when it comes to this kind of situation either. So I don't want to be like, everything's going to be great, everything's going to work out. But I'm also not going to be like, life sucks. I don't know. I fully haven't really how to handle those kind of situations. It doesn't happen all the time, but like when you're on tour, shows every night, you're going to talk to people every night about one thing or another. So it weighs on me every now and then, but I also, like, I never want people to feel uneasy about coming up and talking to any of us, So
yeah, no,
it's a weird thing.
No, I totally, I can completely see exactly where you're coming from, because it's like, especially when people, I mean, the way that, obviously art, entertainment, whatever you like to call it, is set up, it's a one-sided relationship. You as the consumer are, listening to something, watching something, experiencing it, putting it in your own life, putting it in context at what it means to you. In the case of independent music, you have the accessibility of doing exactly what you're talking about, where it's like, okay, these people that have created this, well, they've taken, I'll Get By. Like, they've taken that song and they've been like, okay, it applies directly to my life. I have all of these preconceived notions and all these things I want to say to you, and spill this all out. And then you're expected, and not like in a mean way, but you're expected to expected to like kind of clean it up and be kind of like, oh yeah, well, because I went through this, and like, well, this is what I did. Here's some fucking pointers. And it's like, dude, no, I'm, like you said, I'm experiencing the same shit as you are, except maybe I'm just older.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's like, I don't have any like great, like epic piece of advice to give you. I just kind of like, maybe just the fact that somebody else went through the same kind of shit as you, maybe that'll help you, and that's really all I can offer. But also, it's not. That's what I personally chose to write the lyrics about. So I can't be upset about people wanting to relate and wanting to talk to me about it, because it's like, yeah, that is what it's about. That's what I wrote it about. But at the same time, it's like, I can't really tell if if that is my obligation or not. Like, I've talked to friends who are in bands and stuff too, who you're also friends with. They all deal with the same shit, and it's like, there is a line that is crossed. It's like, I don't know. I don't really know how to put it. It's like, there is a certain obligation that's expected from you, but at the same time, it's not really my fault for it. Does that make sense? I don't know.
I totally agree, and I think the way that I've put it in context is the fact that you as a like I said, consumer, to put it in a cold term, it's definitely great that you have this experience, but you also need to be respectful and mindful that whoever you're having this experience with, as far as like the person creating it, you can't expect them to like I said earlier, where it's like clean up, make you feel better about it. Like, how you feel better is how you consume that product, because that's essentially how you've interacted with that person. And it's right. Like having that line put up where it's just like, okay, well, I'm a human like you, and I experience basically the same things as you do. I can't offer you solace besides this record that we've put out.
Right. That's perfectly said.
Yeah, no, but and I think that the point that you hit on too, where the idea that to know that there's someone else out there that has experienced that, for lack of a better term, refreshing. It's like, okay, well, you're not in this alone. Like, however isolated you may feel, it's not a singular experience. Like, like honestly, it's like the way I joked about the song, I'll Get By, but it's like when I first initially heard that, and I put it, in context for obviously the lyrics, and you as a person, what you're experiencing, and the passing of your father, because my father died. It's been 4 or 5 years, and it was like,
sorry, man.
Yeah, it's an awful experience, because it's like it's an inevitable experience, but don't. I'm 33, you're 29. It's like, we shouldn't be losing our fathers that early. Honestly, and like in the way that I experienced that song, it was like, it was like, oh, this is exactly my thoughts and my feelings about the way that things, even though I'm sure the circumstances of our father's passing are completely different, not of the same thing. There's just pull through that.
There's a certain emotion that's evoked through it that you can completely relate to.
Right, and like I never partially because I'm a responsible adult, I never would have gone up to you and been like, Kyle, like, Jesus Christ, here's the song, like, I'm gonna tell you for a half an hour all of this experience,
right?
Just because I feel if that were to eventually come out like it is now, we would have had it would have made more sense, as opposed to just like, all right, I'm gonna dump all this shit on you, and there you go, dude, have a good night.
With that being said, though, it's similar, but it is different, because like you and I, we met for the first time really on that tour, but it's like we kind of knew each other, who each other were, so it would have been a bit different talking, because like we were in the same situation, just hanging out, talking, it wouldn't, so it is a little different than just some random person I've never met. Like, okay, this is what happened to me, but even with that being said too, it's like, I can't fault somebody for wanting to do that. So I always feel kind of guilty about it, because like I'm on tour, I'm playing these songs every night. I don't really want to talk about them before or after we play too. But it's like I kind of put myself in that position. So it's really
right.
I feel like it is my fault.
Yeah. Well, and it's good that you keep that attitude, because I think the moment that you shut that off from your head, where it's just like, oh, like this is too much, I can't handle this, even though for lack of a better term, it is a chore. You still need to put yourself in that mind frame of like, okay, well, I can be there to the best of my ability. Like that's all I can do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think honestly the thing that I always try to do is like, as long as I just try to be friendly with everybody and just give everybody, like if anyone come up and talk to me, I'm not going to go, hey, how's it going? Just immediately walk away. Like I'll,
yeah.
I mean, like I don't know. For the most part, I'll always try to just like talk to somebody and just like not even talk about that. Like even if somebody tells me something, be like, oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. I feel like in a way it's almost better to not even try to give advice because I'm just going to fuck it up anyway. So it's just like, I think maybe just an open ear is the best thing, I can offer.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, it can be draining as hell on tour when the last thing you want to do is hear some sad story, but it's like, I don't know. I think in a way that's what you have to do.
All you're simply doing is engaging. You're just like, I'm here, and whatever experience you want to have, hopefully I can provide that for you.
Yeah, for sure.
When Pianos, started to, tour more regularly, and obviously you guys started to, grow as far as people paying attention to what you were doing, I'm sure there were certain moments where it felt, I guess, for lack of a better term, like real, where it was like, oh shit, this thing that we're doing is kind of a thing. Like people are really gravitating towards it. Do you have any of those early memories that, or it can even be recent memories that, it really just kind of solidified, whether it was like, a random show. It doesn't even have to be like a big event, but just those moments that you're just like, wow, this is fucking weird.
Yeah. I think honestly the first time that we went to Europe and we were in Europe and people knew our music, that was pretty humbling for all of us. It's just like, holy shit, like where are we? Like I don't know anything about anything right now where I am, but people are coming up and like know the music. So I think that was like an eye opener. And then I think also when we wrote like The Lack Long After and we started playing those songs live, I think was when we, not just like huge thing, but we started seeing more people like getting into or like gravitating towards the songs, which is pretty cool for us. That's not why we wrote that record, but like it's cool to like really see people take an interest in it in a way.
I think the common thing of what at least I've taken away from like independent music in general, where it's just like, regardless of like, how many people pay attention to you, all you're wanting to inspire is a reaction, in the sense of like, I want you to either like fucking love what I'm doing or fucking hate what I'm doing.
Right.
Because it's like that there are so many bands that fall in the middle of, just in the middle, where it's like, oh yeah, they're cool. Like they're a good band. Like they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
Like you hear that all day, every day. And it's like, it's so, it's sad, because it's like those are the bands that will obviously, in 3 or 4 years time will just completely fall off the radar.
Right.
And it's like, that's why, that's what obviously is cool with what you guys are doing, because the way that I see people interact with you, just from a musical standpoint, is like this, this resonates on a deeper level than just like, oh dude, they got some sick riffs, bro. Like,
yeah, totally.
Right. Which is, I'm sure that's like that in and of itself is like a gratifying thing for you to like kind of, step back and be like, oh wow.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird thing. It's awesome, but it's also like, okay, so we wrote this record that we're all like happy with, but it was a very serious, heavy record,
Yeah.
For me, obviously, but for everybody involved, I think. And so it is this weird thing where like, not that your band is perceived a certain way, but like the content of it, it's like, I don't know. We've had multiple conversations about this on tour that like, I don't know if writing this record and singing these songs every night and going on tour all the time, like, I don't know if that's like, I know at first it definitely helped me, because it just like, it really got it out. Like my family, my friends, like my band, everyone was so supportive, and just like, I know 100% it helped me with like the loss of my dad.
Right.
But then like, as a couple of years went on, it's like, I still get into those songs every night, and it's like, it still means exactly the same, but it's also now I'm like, am I holding on too much now? Like, am I, the fact that I'm playing these songs and going on tour every night, is that like preventing me from getting on or like moving on better than I should be by now, So it's definitely, it's a delicate balance. And I think the fact that I love playing the song so much is like, it's still okay, you know, but I will say I'm excited to write a new record that like touches on a lot of the same subjects, but kind of how I feel now about them. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah. It just this big topic of like, am I really helping myself by playing these songs still? You know, cause I know at one point I was, but now is it almost doing more damage than it is good to like rehash it every single night, every single song.
No, that's such an important, like such an interesting point. Cause it's like, that's something that isn't, that's like collateral damage, you know, that's like something, you know, the people that interact with art can remove themselves from it. They can take off the record, but it's like, because you're living it on, you know, 6 to 7 months out of the year. You know, that's something, that's interesting. And I mean, I'm sure as things progress, like, especially when, you know, you guys start doing another record, then it'll start to make sense in the context of like, oh, okay, yeah, this is more harmful than good, or this is positive that I still experience this.
Right. Yeah. And it's also, I feel like guilty is not the word, but in a way it's like, okay, I had this shitty thing happen to me in like my life experience, but it's like, there's so many other people who have so many shitty things and even more shitty things than have happened to me. So it's, but I wrote these lyrics for this record, and that's like kind of what has been latched on to people's ideas of our band, I guess. That's like what they think of. They think of like a family member dying when they think of our band or something like that, you know, which is like, I almost feel guilty for that in a way that like, I mean, it is what it is. I'm not sorry about it, but I'm just kind of like, man, you know, I kind of just put it on this record, and that is what it is now. I can't get rid of it.
Right. It's like that's the lasting legacy of that. I mean, you know, not to be like grandiose about it, but it's like that's the people are going to attach that meaning to that record, and that's like, you know, that's something that you would never have predicted when you were doing it, but then once you're able to have context like you do now, it's like, oh wow, okay, I guess that's how it'll be thought of.
Right, yeah, for sure. And it's also like when we were writing it, I told the dudes I felt weird because it's like I mean, I think vocalists and lyricists should be personal. You should write about your own life. But it was like so personal for me, you know, like losing my father, you know, that like solely affected me within the band. And I told the guys, I was like, I feel almost bad that like you guys wrote this music I think is amazing, and I'm just pouring my heart out over it, like with this one specific thing over the entire record. And they're like, nah, dude, like we want you to. That's what we wrote it for you to do that. You know, so like I think I'll just say the guys in the band were like absolutely fucking incredible with like just letting me vent and get it all out. You know, I think like I'll be forever grateful for that. You know, I might have some there's like, God, shut up, but like it really does like mean so much to me that they're so cool about it. You know.
The band isn't a full-time thing as far as like you're making a living off of it, but you know, how's it sat with like, you know, your mom and the rest of your family in regards to like you're kind of putting, because essentially you're putting your life on pause right now. You're just like, okay, I have this job that, you know, is a means to an end, but it's not like, you know, the end game. You know, once you started to sort of, you know, focus on that rather than like, oh, let's quote unquote start my life. Was that difficult for, you know, your mom? Your dad was alive when obviously things were happening or starting to happen for the band. So how did it sit with them? Were they just like, what the fuck are you doing, Kyle?
Right. Well, that's funny. Like my mom and dad have always been like, they're always super supportive of what I wanted to do, you know, and I think, I mean, of course, as your parent, they're always going to be worried about what you're doing with your life and stuff like that. So, like, in that regard, they were normal. But I think a lot of it's my mom's fault because my mom is Christian, and we went to this church called Mount Oak, which is like a big church around the area, and they used to put on shows all the time, like Zayo and like Stave Faker and like Project A6, and all those like heavier, like Christian bands, you know, stuff like that. So that was also an introduction for like heavier music for me, and my mom would serve pizza in the back. So it's like she would like take me to these shows. So honestly, it's kind of her fault that I got so into music too. But yeah, I think she was always like worried about me going on tour because she also had like the old mentality of like, oh, you're gonna go on tour and like there's gonna be so much like sex and drugs. But I mean, now she knows it's not like that. But but I think at first she was kind of worried about all that I was getting so into it. And my dad was just kind of like, his whole mindset was like, as long as I didn't neglect my responsibilities, you know, he's like, you can go on tour as long as you handle your shit, kind of, you know. But then I think when I started getting like really good touring more and more, he was stoked because he knew how much I loved it, but I think he was also just like, as a worried father, he's kind of like, all right, what are you gonna do when it's all over? But I don't know. It's funny now thinking about it, like, man, if I go back and talk to him now, what do you think about it? You know, but
Yeah, no, that would be when you're trying to put all these things in context for a parent, where it's like, okay, there's this thing called punk and hardcore, and then on top, it's like there's so many layers to unwrap. It's so it's difficult for them to understand it because, like you said, I mean, your mom's perception, where it's just like, okay, well, it's like, you know, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue. Yeah, so it's just funny for them to be like, oh, okay, I get what it's like. It's, you know, it's 6 dudes in a terribly smelling van. Like, that's it.
Right, yeah, really. It's like, yeah, we're sleeping on floors and we're playing at some like shithole every night and doing the same thing the next day. And it's like, why is that even fun? It's like, I don't know, it just is. It's the best. So,
right? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think now, like, we've been doing it for so long, my mom is like, I think she gets excited because she knows how much I still love doing it. And like, we have been doing like better tours in the past couple of years and like doing okay. So I think my mom, and I think she knows that I'm not like blindly, like, I'm not going to be 40 years old, like, still playing the same shows, you know. I mean, maybe like, who knows? Maybe we'll never break up. We'll just do stuff here and there whenever we want. You know, who knows? But it's like, she knows that I'm not going to be doing this forever. But I've pushed it so hard up until this point. I just got to take it a little farther and see what we can do. And then once we're done, we're done. You know, and then everything will be fine. So.
Right. You're being realistic about it, because that's like I think it's so funny because so many a lot of bands have the idea that, you know, they start with like a business plan before they start with anything else. Whereas just like the things that prove to be quote unquote successful are the ones that obviously start in an organic manner rather than like, oh, like, here we go, let's do this as a career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's how it started. Like, I mean, honestly, if you would have told me when the band first started, like late 2006, that we'd still be doing it, I'd be like, okay, maybe, cool, yeah. But now it's like, I'm so stoked that we are, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to hit on 2 last things before I let you go. I find it interesting just because, like we were talking about earlier, obviously music being cyclical, and then like, you know, the idea that especially within the past, you know, 5 to 7 years, you know, bands that obviously are peers of yours, you know, Touche, A Lot of Dispute, all that stuff. It's so funny to see this crop of bands that obviously, you know, are presenting their music in a very honest fashion, and kids obviously gravitate towards it. Is it is it funny for you to kind of put your band in context of all of that, to just be like, this is weird that like we're part of this kind of for lack of a better term, collective, like that this scene that's like, you know, bubbling up and obviously has bubbled up even higher now. Do you guys talk about it in the band at all, or is it just kind of one of those things where it's like, it's funny?
I don't know. It's strange. It's flattering for us to be lumped into like such bands that we respect musically and as people. Like, we're best friends with all those guys, you know. So it's definitely humbling to be a part of it, but it's also just kind of like we said, we never really like sought out that kind of stuff, you know. Yeah. Like, we didn't really try to like this whole like resurgence thing or whatever. I think everyone, like, it's not even my band, like everyone's band, it's just like, we didn't set out to try to do a certain thing. We just like started playing music that we liked, and then like made friends with other bands that were doing it, and then just kept being a band and kept touring and kept doing it. And I think that's honestly how it happened, you know. But I think people are writing powerful records that are important and mean something, and I think that also contributed to it. But it is, I don't know. It's a strange thing to be kind of lumped into all of it. I mean, I'm honored, I'm grateful, but it's also not like I just want to write records that I think are good.
I mean, it's something that you personally couldn't say, but I can say it just as an outside observer, where it's like there's something to be said about obviously being part of you know, a musical community and being like all these bands that are, you know, akin to one another. But, you know, on the flip side of it, especially when a band exists for longer than, you know, 2 or 3 years, that can be limiting. That can be the quote unquote ceiling, because you know, I've heard people refer to this in like, not in a negative sense, but in you know, like the Warped Tour ghetto, where it's like the bands that like the ceiling of what they can accomplish as far as just like a musical, you know, like the audience that they will play to is Warped Tour. That's like the ceiling, you know, which is obviously a pretty fucking massive ceiling, but a ceiling nonetheless. And so where it's like, you know, I could see where you guys are coming from, where it's like, it's great, we're a part of all these bands and all these, you know, all these things are happening around us, but you know, not only your band, but obviously all the other bands that are in that same ilk, want to differentiate themselves from one another, and not in the fuck you way, but like in a, well, no, we can play to different people.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's the thing. It's like we talk about this a lot, and like especially now because we're trying to write a new record. It's like we're not trying to write a screamo record, for lack of a better word. We're just trying to write like a good record. It's like it's frustrating. I feel like a lot of people who listen to hardcore or listen to certain bands, it's like you have a certain expectation of what you want them to do, and it's like after you're in the band for so long, your musical taste changes. You want to listen to different stuff. You want to play different stuff. And that's like normal. I know every band feels like that. So it's like, we don't always listen to like hardcore or screamo or anything like that anymore. A lot of us don't even listen to that kind of stuff that much at all anymore. So it's like, I shouldn't say it like that because we still have like appreciation for it. We still love certain bands, but overall it's like, we listen to a whole bunch of different shit. So it's like, we want to just expand. And I can't really say for me, but I'll speak for my band. Like they're all so talented musically and can write like awesome shit, that it's like we can write other records other than just like heavy, abrasive, screamy records, and I mean that personally, that's where I'm at right now. I just want to write. I want to write what comes naturally, but also like something that I can be proud of at this point in my life.
Yeah, well, and I think that, I mean, obviously you can you can point to the song on, the split you did with Touche, where it's just like there's such a marked difference. And not in a bad way, not in like we're distancing ourselves from our past, but just like in a,
right.
This is the next logical step for what we are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, totally. And like I feel we're forever thankful for Touche doing a split with us too, because it's like I feel like that. I mean, I know Jeremy and I have talked about it multiple times too, just about like we both kind of were happy with that split in a lot of ways, but really I feel like it gave us both a chance to kind of like write a weird song and see what we can do, and then like move on from there. So you can kind of hear it because Touche's new record is amazing, So it's like
right. It's nice to be part of a community for kind of the inception of the band, but then obviously it's like you want to grow past that just because everybody wants to creatively challenge themselves.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to get trapped in it. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know how some people feel about it, but it's like, who wouldn't want to play? Like, I'm not saying we're trying to like sell out every show or whatever. I mean, that'd be cool, but it's like, who doesn't want to play to like more people? Who doesn't want to write a record and like go on tour and like for the little time that you can, like be successful and like, hey, play, like I can go on tour and play music to like a lot of people. I think that's cool. I have no problem with doing that. I know a lot of bands like, I don't want to play basements forever, which is like, I love playing basements also, but it's like, if you're the same band and you still have the same intentions, I don't see any problem with like doing other things, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but yeah.
Yeah, no, your point is well taken. And the last thing I want to hit on was the idea, obviously, like, we were talking about at the very beginning where, you're married now, you've been in a relationship for quite some time, and like the perils of being in a relationship that you're gone for a majority, well, not a majority, but, a decent amount of time, and like the challenges that imposes. But obviously, since you guys have, lived through it and have decided to commit yourselves for life, obviously, I'm sure she's completely and very understanding. Because obviously the last thing she want to do is be like, hey Kyle, you should quit the band because you need to spend time at home. But just the challenges of like being able to maintain that relationship where you feel so foreign when you return back home after tour. I just always remember coming home from tour and having my now wife but significant other at the time. She was just like, she always gave me like a 3 to 4 day window of like, okay, you got to get acclimated to like how to treat me, like, just in these ways of like, you got to integrate back into like the real world, and like, you have to think about, fucking cleaning your dishes or whatever, just random examples of like normal human behavior that you just forget because you're in a van.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts you have wrapped up into that of how you obviously have been able to kind of, make it work for as long as you guys have had.
Yeah, like you said, you have to decompress for a while. You're not constantly moving in a van with other dudes. You're in one place with one person, which is great, but it's different, and it does take a while, especially like you said, you're on tour for a month and then you come home and it's like completely just like standstill, and it feels insane. But I will say Lauren has been like 100% supportive forever. Like ever since she's known me, she's known that I've wanted to play in a band and like push it really hard. And you know, I can't say, like, if we started touring like 10 months out of the year straight, we'd probably both lose our minds. You know, I don't think I'd want to do that anyways. Yeah, I think like go on tour for a month and then I'm home for a month and then go do something else and come back. It is a balancing act, but I think overall, like, what specifically that we do to make it work, we just do, you know. And she's always cool with it. I mean, it sucks for both people. I won't pretend like it's harder for me because I'm out on tour. You know what I mean? I mean, it sucks for me to be away from her too because I love her. It's like not hanging out and just like doing the normal everyday things you do with your partner, you know. But it is harder on her when I'm gone, you know. So I just lost my train of thought again. But yeah, I don't know. She's very independent in a way that like. I always joke she's definitely the adult in the relationship. Like I don't know, we make it work. Like it sucks when I'm gone, but when I come home, it's awesome. You know, it's just like every couple on tour. It's like you have like those days on tour where you're just like fed up. It's like, God damn it! Like I just want to see you. Like this sucks. This is stupid. This is frustrating. But like overall, we make it work. She's 100% supportive, and I don't know, she can cope, you know. So I'm forever thankful that she's like that. Because if not, I don't know what would happen. I probably wouldn't be in the band, you know.
Right? Yeah.
I do love Lauren more than I love pianos. So.
Right. Well, yeah, you have the comfort of having obviously a support system at home and something to look forward to when you do come home, because it's like it is those experiences of you know, just doing the most random simple shit like running errands together that it heightens your appreciation of it. You know, whatever, the whole absence makes the heart grow fonder. It's a cliche, but I mean, there's truth to it as well. So
there is truth to that for sure.
And so yeah, it's able to, like I said, you know, you're able to enjoy those experiences maybe a little bit more than you would if it kind of, you know, became a routine. Which a routine is great, but you know, if you take it for granted, that's obviously when it becomes, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's. Also, it is, like you said, it gives you something to look forward to. Because, like when I come home from tour, like, really, I mean, it's cool to see friends, but, like, Lauren is really the only thing I'm excited about. Like, hang out. I mean, now, it's weird to say my wife now. It's sick. Like, I just want to hang out with my wife. Other than that, it's like, being home isn't really all that. You know, it's like, cool, I get to go to work and, like, hang. I mean, it's cool, but, like, after about a month from, like, right now, I'm already like, man, I'm excited to write. I'm excited to, like, go on tour. You know, like, so I love being home, but it's also, like, if it weren't for Lauren, like, I'm sure I'd get annoyed on tour, but, like, I wouldn't really have a huge reason to, like, stay in Baltimore, you know? But, like, yeah, now that I have a wife, I want to come home and be with my wife.
Well, I really appreciate you hanging out, Kyle. This has been fun for me, and I hope you've enjoyed it in some capacity as well.
I have. It's cool to just, like, talk and not be asked, like, stupid questions.
So that is that. How about Kyle? Congratulations to him, because he recently just got married, and I know we kind of hit on that in the interview, but yeah, a big congrats on that, because that is a huge step in someone's life, and it's great when they're able to find that other weird person to be with. Visit TopShelfRecords.com and pre-order the You Blew It record. Visit PropertyOfZach.com. Visit 100wordspodcast.com. The editor for this episode, as always, is the beautiful and handsome. You can be beautiful and handsome, right? Tom Richfield. Mad props to him. And until next week, be safe, everybody.